Whoops. There we go. All right, we have three presenters today, and I'm really delighted to be able to introduce all three of them. Again, our first session is called The What, Why, and How of Zero Waste. And so to introduce that topic, we have Katie Duell, Ann Brodsky, and Denise Roth-Barber with us today. And Katie Duell has a master's degree in environmental studies and social work from the University of Montana, and she's currently the executive director at Home Resource in Missoula. She has studied as an environmental educator in large landscape and biodiversity conservation and as a mediator and facilitator for systems level social change. She fell in love with zero waste as a critical, doable, and elegant approach to addressing climate change and protecting biodiversity and supporting healthy, vibrant communities and economies. She lives with her husband, her two kids, and a furry black dog in Missoula. So she's going to go first and share about the Missoula Resource Organization and Zero Waste Missoula and 0 by 50 Missoula efforts, I believe. I don't want to speak for her, but she has expertise in all those areas. And then following her will be Ann Brodsky and Denise Roth-Barber talking about their experience in Helena. And Ann Brodsky is an at-large member of Helena's Citizen Conservation Board, also known as CCB, an advisory board to the City Commission. She co-chairs the Waste Committee of the CCB with Denise, and with Denise and many others, they drafted the waste resolution adopted by the Helena City Commission in February. Ann is a retired attorney and still practices in a pro bono capacity, my bad. In addition to these and other pursuits, she enjoys hiking, backpacking, and skiing in Montana and other wild places with families, friends, and her trusted canine companion, Hank. And if you had a chance to catch her photo in our promo, that happens to be one of her favorite places on the planet, on the North Fork of the Flathead River. And lastly, Denise Roth-Barber is also a member of the CCB, and as you know, co-chairs the Waste Committee with Ann. And when she's not trying to reduce Helena's waste stream, she can be found out hiking or biking the trails around Helena or floating and fishing Montana's rivers with her family. So again, we're thrilled to have these extraordinary women in our first session here, and I'm going to just pass it on to Katie Duell.
Thanks, Robin. I want to start by, it says I can't share my screen. Maybe you can make me a host?
Oh, yes, my bad here. There we go. How's that?
Let's see. Oh yeah, I think that is going to work. Oh dear. That's good, except that's the end of the slideshow. So let me just get to the beginning. Sorry. I get everything. There we go. Okay, take two. How's that look? I did want to start by thanking all of you, but thanking Glacier Country Climate Smart for having Home Resource to be part of this important topic. And it's really an honor to be helpful with others on the journey to zero waste. I want to give a special shout out to Parkside Credit Union, who are in Missoula and up in Glacier Country. We're a Parkside partner this year, and we're going to have some fun at our events and help them zero waste their world a little bit. And they specifically helped get the word out about this talk. So we appreciate that. And then I want to thank everyone in the audience who's here to listen and learn. I really appreciate your interest. So I am going to tell you just a little bit about my story and then go into how Home Resource got involved with zero waste specifically, and then the path and actions to get Missoula to zero waste, where we're at, and end with why zero waste is so important and what you all can do. So my path, I was born in the Midwest. I went to college in the East. I studied American history of all things. When I graduated from college, I moved to Wyoming and started to work for the National Outdoor Leadership School. We do extended wilderness trips all over the West. I did that for years and years. And that work and just who I was before then, I had realized how important functioning natural systems are to our human psyche and to our physical health, the value of that. But I had a moment out there in the mountains south of Jackson Hole. It was 20 below, pitch black, stars like diamonds in the sky, when I just realized I really needed to give back to and advocate for keeping the biodiversity and our natural systems intact. This is all before climate change. People were even talking about it or aware of it. So it's quite a while ago. But at that point, I did make the decision to get a little more education. I came to Missoula to get my master's in environmental studies. I worked in large landscape conservation and biodiversity conservation, mostly through the Yellowstone to Yukon Conservation Initiative, which you may all be somewhat familiar with. International, US and Canada, it's all about connected systems. I did that for quite a while and realized that the conflict and human behavior are what is stopping us from achieving some of our goals. And then returned to University of Montana to get a second master's in social work. Did a lot of work in mediation. I worked with, at that point, working in family systems, organizational systems, community systems, and natural systems. And was just reminded of this, one of my favorite quotes, that the first rule of intelligent tinkering is to keep all the parts. And that's true with all of the systems that we live in and that are important to us. I did a little more work on, I did a climate impacts assessment of the crown of the continent on contract, did a couple other things, but I really was attracted to Home Resources triple bottom line. And so I eventually joined the team there as the executive director. And really, when we talk about the triple bottom line, it's a quadruple bottom line for us at Home Resource. There is a social bottom line. There's the environmental bottom line. There's a community and economy bottom line as well. So we separate those two. And at Home Resource, we really feel like we do good work every day. We keep 900 tons of material out of the landfill a year. We hire people who are experiencing barriers to employment. We have over 40 people on our payroll each year. We have over $1 million a year budget, and 96% of everything that we spend is spent in our local economy here. We provide affordable materials, and we're building a culture of reuse. All of that is such good work, as I said, and at a point also realized that that good work every day isn't enough in the face of recognizing that really the deluge of waste and the culture that we live in that creates that waste every day, and just keeping it out of the landfill is a really important task. And what we really needed to do is tackle the systems and structures and culture that creates that waste in the first place. So in comes Climate Smart Missoula. Again, before it was even called Climate Smart Missoula, it wasn't incorporated yet. And they were working, they had convened community climate summits in order to create the Missoula Climate Action Plan. And I was invited to facilitate, in my role at Home Resource, to facilitate a waste breakout session. There was one of 12 buckets. So here we are, 200 people crowded into the conference room in the Florence Hotel in Missoula with Missoula dignitaries and all these brilliant scientists. And everyone's choosing their breakout groups to set priorities and figure out what climate actions we need to take. And I'm leading the waste bucket. I think I mentioned that. So it starts to feel like picking kickball teams in middle school. That's okay. I'm looking around. We have 5 people at our waste table. So it was myself, the other facilitator, both required to be there, someone that I invited to be there, a county employee who was also required to be there for their work. And then there was one person who actually chose spontaneously to come over to join us. So that's when I realized that waste is not sexy, and nobody cries over keeping toilets out of the landfill. So regardless of that, we dig into our work. We talk about the key pieces to reducing waste. We talk about compost, we talk about recycling, we talk about deconstruction. And then it hits us all at the same time, our little group of 5 really, as we're trying to prioritize amongst those, that it's the whole enchilada that we need to tackle zero waste as a system and as a whole entity. And we can't pick out any one of these topics if we're really going to be effective in what we want to do. And so from that small, not sexy group, the Zero Waste Missoula group was born. That was Home Resource took that on. We led and facilitated it. And that group is still going. And I have a huge, I just want to give a lot of credit to Climate Smart Missoula for kicking us off. And I love that connection that we have with you all up there in Glacier Country that way too. So the group gave itself a purpose. We also adopted the ZWIA, Zero Waste International Alliance definition of zero waste. So this idea that we're mimicking natural systems, that nothing is wasted, and that zero waste does not include burning or burying, which has been really important because these things do come up regularly as a way to get rid of waste. We developed, next step that we did, we developed a proclamation that Mayor John Engen did read. This was in 2015. I envisioned little page boys with trumpets, but that's not quite how it works. And we just, that April was going to be moving Missoula towards Zero Waste Month. The next thing we did is we created a guide to zero waste services in our community. And then we got to work and went big. We worked with a Missoula City Council member, Marilyn Marler, and we created Missoula's Zero Waste Resolution that was passed by City Council in 2016. You notice that there are a lot of whereases. If you get to making a zero waste resolution, will help you with these fancy whereases that are critically important. The purpose of the resolution was we set this goal of 90% waste reduction by 2050 for our community. And then you can see that there are interim steps along the way also. That resolution also committed the city to developing a zero waste plan within 2 years in order to reach that goal. So next steps in our process, we got to work on creating that plan. All of the work that we're doing at this point, once the resolution was passed, is in very close cooperation with the city of Missoula. And in particular, we worked with Chase Jones, but there were lots of folks there who've been really helpful with the process. So we created a zero waste advisory committee. And then perhaps the most important thing we did is we did community listening sessions. This is actually an open house that followed those listening sessions. We reached 300 people in about 6 sessions over time. And the results from all of those sessions were just deliciously clear and consistent in terms of what people thought was important to move our community towards zero waste. And from those results, from what we heard from the community, we developed the 4 paths that are the basis of our zero waste plan. Here are the 4 paths. I'm going to talk about them not quite in the order that they're listed here. This is the way they are in the plan. But I want to talk about education first because it was the most important priority by all counts in all sessions. That's what we heard from the community, that we needed to educate people. So we think about that as teaching people the why and the how of zero waste and raising awareness of why we need to do it. The next piece was policy piece, and people were aware that we need both carrots and sticks. We need incentives and things like bans. We talk about landfill bans, or as an incentive, we have Missoula has a We Pledge program encouraging people to use reusable containers and reduce food waste. So that's an incentive program to give people recognition. And then infrastructure was critically important piece of what we're doing, the structures and systems in order to actually do it. So I like to just ask people, think to yourself, now who's recycled your cardboard lately? Probably a lot of you. If you want to put up a little hand, you don't have to. How many of you have recycled concrete or asphalt shingles? And I know you may not have as much access to them, but they're very recyclable, and we don't have the systems and structures to recycle them. And there are tons of pounds in our landfills. So that's just a a point about infrastructure, that we need infrastructure in order to do it, even if we want to do it. And then finally, this access piece, Path A, was critically important to us. And that piece is really about equity, that there is no greater burden on one community than on another community in order to get to our zero waste goal. The next thing we did in the plan, there are 4 key pieces to the plan. The pathways are perhaps the most important, and those are followed up by the 77 actions that are divided amongst those pathways. And you can see we prioritize them by short-term, medium-term, and long-term to help keep us moving along a reasonable timeline. We also created in the plan guiding principles. And so we had 4 guiding principles. These include to rethink first, to seek upstream solutions instead of downstream. So to stop creating waste before it becomes waste, and to maintain equity was another critical guiding principle. And then finally, that we make sure there's transparency and accountability all through the process. So those were our guiding principles. And finally, we put together our critical next steps, or the immediate path forward, which includes developing some sort of funding strategy, do a baseline study, which is and then long-term data collection, and then establish a staff position in order to implement this work. So Missoula City Council passed 0 by 50, Missoula's pathway to zero waste, in 2018, just, maybe 2.5 years after the resolution. That was really exciting. So Home Resource is part of all of this. Home Resource has long been at work on the education piece, even before the plan was passed. We focus on raising awareness, teaching the why of zero waste, the how of reuse through woodshop workshops. We have spontaneous construction, which is our annual festival of creative reinvention. We have repair clinics, which we call fix-its. Home Resource also developed, this is SpawnCon, this is our Parkside team last year. We also developed ZWAP, which is the Zero Waste Ambassadors Program. It's ZWAP, Knockout Waste in Missoula. I don't know how many of you can see me. It's a 5th grade educational adventure. We teach those students where stuff comes from, where it goes, and empower them to make choices for a sustainable future. We think it's like our plan is to teach the cohort every year. In 2019, we did reach all Missoula County Public Schools and almost all the other private and parochial schools, almost 1,000 students. By teaching this cohort these principles every year, we believe it's like cigarettes and seatbelts. The children will then teach their parents and take it out to the community. Of course, then COVID hit, we moved it all online. And the great thing about that is you don't have to come to Home Resource anymore to get your ZWAP education. So we'd like to get this out to 5th graders all over the state at this point. All right. We also teach classes, we give presentations. We created the 0 by 50 website, which includes a section on what do I do with, that's housed on the city website. But if you're like, what do I do with this mattress? I don't want to throw it away. Hopefully there's an answer for you in there. We have a newsletter. We still manage the Zero Waste Missoula group and listserv. We've offered community series, and I mentioned the fix-it clinics. The policy piece is mostly on the city. They did dig into a plastic bag ban at one point. It's a hard political climate right now. My personal belief is that if we go for policy and we're building a lot of political capital in order to pass things, that we want to go pretty big and we want to do something that has long-term consequences. So I worry that if we start with something small, we'll run out of energy and juice to pass the next big thing. But really our goal right now is to generate, again, that awareness and demand so that we can move those policies forward when the time comes. The other piece is infrastructure. Home Resource did just hire a zero waste about a year ago, a zero waste systems manager who does run the city's infrastructure task force. We do a lot of work with construction and demolition waste, which is right up our alley. And we're working to create services and systems that allow us to do zero waste. We do zero waste audits, and we've helped people become zero waste. We have a zero waste classroom, and one whole school, Jeanette Rankin Elementary, went zero waste as well. So this is the students doing their zero waste work. And we're going to do some of that work with Parkside Credit Union also, which is kind of fun up in your neck of the woods. So we are moving forward on all these things. Here's an award that we gave for Zero Waste Trailblazer. Log Jam Presents, also shut down at this point from COVID, their event venue. I will say that it feels slow some days. COVID was pretty hard on all of us for lots of reasons. It was hard on our business. It's hard on the environment with all the takeout and plastics. And we did move everything online, but we are motivated and committed. And we are really fully relaunched at this point. And here's why. So I have a few tough statistics that I'm going to throw out. These come from Rob Davies, who's a physicist at the University of Utah. We are facing a natural crisis. Our rate of extinction is 1,000 times the natural rate on the planet at the moment. We have a justice crisis. 24 people, that's 24, control half the world's wealth. We need 1.7 Earths to maintain our resource demands that we are currently pushing out there. And obviously we have a political polarization crisis. So the climate issue is not a technological problem, it is a cultural problem. And income, zero waste. The beautiful thing is that we believe at Home Resource that we can transform our relationship with materials and create a zero waste world. We believe community means everyone, and sustainable means thriving. We believe we can and we must address the critical issues of today, climate change, social and racial justice, with an integrated approach to sustainability. We believe in the power of youth to lead us to the solutions of tomorrow, and that together we can create the world that we want to live in. So we know we need to act urgently and strategically to address climate change, and zero waste does that. Zero waste is doable and tangible. We know what we need to do, how to do it, and we don't need fancy new technology to do it. Zero waste is a unifier. It crosses socioeconomic and political boundaries. We believe that no one wants to waste, and everyone can participate in zero waste. Finally, zero waste is a multiplier. Every pound of waste that goes to landfill represents 71 pounds of waste that are used to extract, manufacture, and transport those items. So when you keep a pound of waste from the landfill, you actually prevent 72 pounds of waste in our community. So I wanted to jump into next is what you can do. I had to throw in a slide of Glacier for you all. And so to be honest, what can you do? Despair is an option. It's not recommended. We all live through Februaries in Western Montana, so I know that this is a group that can persevere, and I recommend action instead. And here are some options there. And these are not in any order. You can join our Zero Waste Missoula group listserv. You can join the Home Resource newsletter, Green Yes, the C40 Knowledge Hub. These are all international groups working on zero waste. You know, you can watch movies, read articles, talk to your neighbors about what's going on. The educating yourself can be endless, so I don't recommend going down that rabbit hole forever, but popping out and jumping into other things. I suggest taking your education like your coffee, 1 cup a day, maybe the sweetener as needed. It can be a little depressing. You can volunteer, get involved in your community conservation groups and social action groups. Take the 10% challenge, tell yourself, figure out how you're going to reduce your waste 10% this year, and then every year, reduce it 10% more. We just talk about peeling the onion 1 layer at a time. You can try to reduce, just think about when you're buying, do you really need this? Buy less, especially less plastics. Try to buy things that are reused. You can compost, put zero waste systems in your home or your business. Refuse a straw, bring your own bags, reduce your food waste. This is one of the most important ones. Don't beat yourself up. That only hurts all of us. We're all gonna make mistakes and get wasteful at times, and just keep your spirits up and be proud of what you do. You can demand services from your government and from businesses that you're involved with that are zero waste. You can write an article for our Sustainable Missoula column. All of our programs at Home Resource are designed to be replicable and scalable. Replicate them, steal them, take them, borrow them, pass them on to others. We'll help as much as we can. We can scale them up. That's what they're here for. Talk to people, tell them what's possible, tell them why you care about zero waste, tell them what's at stake, and remind them that every little bit helps. I would say if you walk away from one thing from this, it's just know that you're making a difference. Your actions are not futile, they're vitally important. This is a movement. It's a building, painting, singing, dancing, laughing, struggling, exhausting and exhilarating and very powerful movement. And I just want to thank you all for being a part of it. That's all I have.
I forgot to unmute myself. Thank you very much, Katie. That's wonderful.
Sure, let me stop share.
I'm wondering, Katie, maybe by email or some other way, if it'd be possible to get that list of what you can do that you shared with us. I was trying to take notes and I lost track in the middle. I'd like to share them with the participants later, which I can do. And also if you'd be open to sharing your slides with us, should people, there were some really nice quotes and some pieces of data that would be nice to be able to share.
Great, yeah.
Okay, I'll send that out along. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm just going to ask one question that came up before we move on to Anne and Denise, and it was, if I can just find it, I carefully put it over here. There was a question about whether, has anybody tried to having the landfill companies or entities refuse to take certain items that could be recycled or reused, such as the roof shingles or pieces of concrete? Does the county have any interest or information about recycling those types of materials?
Yeah. So I don't think in other places there are, because our landfill is owned by Republic Services and it's a private landfill, we can't tell them, what to take and what not to take. I think they are a large international corporation, Republic Services. And I think they recognize that it's not actually ultimately good for them to take things like concrete and asphalt shingles. They're toxic, it fills their landfill, but they don't have a whole lot of options right now. So they are doing their business as they do their business. And we have had a lot of conversations with the city and the county about creating those types of landfill bans. It's hard to create that kind of landfill ban until we have an alternative, because then people will just drive out the next Forest Service road they see and dump things. So that's a big part of why we're working to create those services where we can.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Useful. Okay, so let's move on to the Helena perspective. Anne, would you like to take the lead there?
Yes.
And let me know if you want me to share anything.
Yeah, I probably will at various times. Thank you very much, Robin. Thank you, Climate Smart Glacier Country, for being here. Again, and all the participants, and Katie, it's just an honor to follow you. Your presentations are fabulous. And I do have to just say, on a personal note, it's sort of amazing because we in Helena, we're doing what you're all doing now. That's what we were doing a year ago. And so to actually be presenting right now is really exciting and a little scary, but mostly exciting. And I'm here with Denise Roth-Barber. She and I are co-chairs of our waste committee on our Citizen Conservation Board, which we call the CCB. So if you hear CCB, you'll know what that is. I am retired. Denise still works, so that's why I'm taking the lead in making this presentation today. One thing I just want to say right at the top, Katie kind of ended with what can we do? And one thing that I have found in the work that we're doing is that, you know, things have kind of flip-flopped in our country for people like me. I'm guessing people like most of you who are on this call, from a national scene that was, you know, beyond the pale to an actually great national scene, but then our state government has gotten, I mean, it couldn't be worse. Since I've lived in Montana over 40 years, I've never seen it this bad. But we're doing things on the local level, and we are able to do things on the local level. And it's really fun not to just fight things, but to do things and move things forward that we all support and feel really good about in terms of making a difference and making a difference to our planet. Which is a little bit of how I came to this subject. I retired at the end of 2015. My husband actually passed away in early 2017. I was chatting with a friend. She's like, "Well, what are you going to do with yourself now?" And I don't usually think of my life that way. I just kind of go what's in front of me. And but I answered her question. I said, "Well, I'm interested in human rights. I'm really interested in climate change. Climate change to me is the one most important subject that we are facing as human beings who are responsible for the climate change that's occurring." So in any event, that leads me to how we came to be. Our city government created the Citizen Conservation Board in 2017. I applied for it. I was appointed to it, as was Denise. We have 14 members. I'm an at-large member. And we're here to advise the city on things it can do to help reduce climate change and as a city government. There was a similar group in 2009, a predecessor group, the Climate Change Task Force, and they came up with a really elaborate 2009 action plan, and some of the things we're doing have taken off from that. Our first year as a CCB, we were getting ourselves sort of oriented. We would get presentations from different city departments. We did some tours. We did a tour of Helena's city county landfill, of our transfer station. There's a private Helena recycling. We got a tour of that operation. And we formed ourselves into different committees. That we have an energy committee, a water committee, an education committee, an outreach, and then the waste committee. So that's what Denise and I started working on with about 6 other members. And we started exploring what's out there, what we might do, what was recommended from the previous group, et cetera. And we quickly learned that Missoula had a zero waste plan. And we got really excited about that and started looking into that. And it was December of 2019, we invited Missoula's sustainability coordinator, Chase Jones. He's no longer a sustainability coordinator. He recently retired from that. But we invited him to speak to our whole Citizen Conservation Board, which he did. He gave a fabulous presentation, and we decided we need to roll up our sleeves and get moving in Helena. And we then started developing a plan to hold a meeting sort of like this, which we've been calling, we've had many of them since then, but community conversations on different waste reduction measures. But then of course, COVID hit. So we've been planning this community conversation. We had invited Katie, we'd invited Chase from Missoula to present. We had Ryan Green from Happy Trash Can in Bozeman, Belgrade area, and John Hilton from our Helena recycling operation. But we had to put it off because we couldn't even have meetings, and it took a while to get onto the Zoom platform. In the meantime, Denise, and I should just say, my presentation, as you can see, is going to be a little bit different. It's not quite as high level as Katie's. I'm giving you sort of the nuts and bolts about what we've done and how we got there, leading to ultimately adoption of our waste reduction resolution, and then where we're going from that. But so it was about a year ago. So Denise and I decided to take a road trip. We visited Katie and Chase in Missoula. We got a tour of home resources. We went out to the city facilities. They're not the landfill, but the wastewater plant and the composting facility that they have out there, which is really exciting. I stopped in, took a trip to Yellowstone Park. I stopped in at Happy Trash Cans facility on my way home, visited that. And then by then Zoom was operating. So we organized and did outreach to get a meeting much like this. We had, I think there were over 50 people in attendance at that first meeting, our community conversation meeting. And we did what you guys are doing. And I'm going to send, we have another community conversation that's coming Monday with staff that Katie referred to, but I'm going to send an invitation of that to Robin. She can share it with you if any of you want to attend, because it sounds like it's going to be a fantastic presentation from a strategy report on waste composition and diversion opportunities. So I'm really excited to hear Lee's report to our community next Monday. But we put together, a mailing list, an email list. We've done press releases. We have a Facebook page. So we've been doing what we can to, and are continuing to develop letters to the editor, things like that, to do outreach to, encourage attendance at our meetings. And we started with the first initial meeting that was really well attended. I will admit the subsequent meetings have not been as well attended, and we're trying to figure that out and try to build that up again, but they've been pretty well attended. But we didn't have over 50 again. In the meantime, I should also mention another policy piece that happened as we're holding community conversations. Helena was revising its growth policy, and we got in on that. I ended up getting in the night before the planning board was about to take a vote on it, and I saw that I didn't like their solid waste section, so I put together some amendments, and it was a great first policy piece, maybe sort of similar to the proclamation that Katie talked about. But we added some zero waste language. We emphasized the waste hierarchy, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. Robin, maybe you can show either the single graph or the PowerPoint of the waste hierarchy. I'm sure you all know, but from the most effective waste reduction, are you able to get that up, Robin?
So I'm looking at, oh, am I muted? No, I'm not. The diversion rates goals that you sent me?
No, it's the waste hierarchy. It's either, I sent you two versions. One's just a waste hierarchy, one's a PowerPoint. But in any event, I'll just keep talking. I mean,
okay, you keep talking, I'll find it.
Okay, it's the upside down pyramid, and I'm sure you've all seen it. It sort of starts with the most effective waste reduction, which is fuse, reduce, reuse, recycle, compost, and landfilling being the least effective way of dealing with our solid waste. And also, of note, that flow goes from the upstream waste reduction measures like refuse, to the midstream, which is like a recycle and reuse, to the downstream, which is the least effective, which is landfilling. Anyway, we got that hierarchy put into our growth policy. We got rid of language that listed the solid waste goals were to maintain efficient, convenient, and cost-effective solid waste service. We eliminated that, and instead we said our goals were going to be to maintain efficient, convenient, and cost-effective services as part of an integrated waste management system with a zero waste goal. So covering not only collection and disposal, but also reduce, reuse, recycle, compost to minimize what was landfilled. So that's now Helena's official growth policy in its solid waste management language. So that was a really good start. Then we continued to have some community conversation, public meetings. They were all held by Zoom. They were advertised again the ways I said. We had one in August. Well, the first one was August. In September, we had one. Denise gave a primer on upstream, midstream, downstream, what those terms mean. We had breakout sessions on food waste, recycling, construction, deconstruction, and education outreach. We compiled notes. In the meantime, our waste committee from the CCB, we did our own internal survey. We surveyed the public, but we used the Missoula's, Katie had a slide of the Missoula's actions timeline. And as members of our conservation board, we all went through the actions timeline, possible actions to achieve, there's the hierarchy. And so that's, you can see the upstream, reduce, reuse, recycle, compost. I'm sure most of you know about this. If you could just switch to the next slide on that PowerPoint, it's a good one. It just talks about the what we're aiming for. I don't think Katie used this term, but it's the language is a circular economy. So a linear economy is we consume and it goes into the landfill, and that's really what we don't want. The recycling economy is, a little bit better because we use things again, but then it ends up in the landfill. A circular economy, zero waste, nothing ends up in the landfill. Everything is reused. Everything is within the capacity of the earth to use and reuse and absorb. So you'll see, I think that's just a good chart that illustrates sort of an abstract concept in a really simple way. And that you don't need to continue with this sharing right now. Thank you, Robin. Let's see. Oh, so we looked at the Missoula action items, and we as board members identified our own top 5 action items. And I think Katie said in her groups of 200, it is really interesting because things do filter up and out. Like things become obvious what people want to do. And there's always new ideas because everyone generates waste and everyone likes to recycle and everyone thinks about how they can do it better. And there's like a million ideas out there, but then they fall into these categories that sort of become the obvious categories and the obvious things to do. And that's exciting to see because it makes you realize, this is what we need to do. This becomes like obvious and it makes sense to people. It makes sense to our decision makers, our city commission. It kind of comes together, I think, really nicely. We had another community conversation in November around America Recycles Day. So we'd focused on recycling. And then from that, it was our goal, and we put together a draft resolution for waste reduction in Helena. Another thing, I mentioned that I think everyone has ideas, and sometimes these ideas can, be different. They can, I just said that they're all similar, but they can also be a little bit different. One really good example of something we've talked about endlessly is recycling. Single stream versus source separated. And there are reasons for each. Single stream, you might get higher participation levels. It might be easier to implement around a community, but it's not as good because you get lots of contamination. I might mention that in Helena, we do have our city, unlike a lot of communities in Montana, our city is responsible for our solid waste services. So we have public solid waste curbside pickup, not recycling, but landfill materials on a weekly basis. They provide us trash bins. We have a transfer station, which also, fortunately, collects recyclables. And there are bins around Helena that and they're segregated. So we do, like probably most of your communities, I mean, we do glass, we do aluminum, tin, paper, newspapers, cardboard. There are separate operations for oil and things like that. There's a private business that does electronics recycling and so forth. Where was I going with this? excuse me, I lost my train of thought. Oh, I was talking about there can be differences in the way we think too, even though there are some similarities, but like single source or not single source. But one of the differences we had as we were developing our resolution was, are we going to do a zero waste resolution as Missoula did, or are we going to do a waste reduction resolution, which is what we decided to do. And I guess my own thought is that there's actually no real rights or wrongs. There are reasons for each. Each community is different. The leadership in each community is different. The members of boards like us are all different. And some of it just takes compromise. But I think we did reach consensus. We came up with a zero waste resolution. And now, Robin, I would ask you if you could put that zero waste resolution, I'll walk through it a little bit with the group.
Sure, and then I'm just going to check in because
We're getting to one.
we're going to want to end at about just about 1 o'clock or so if we can, so that we can have time for questions.
Sorry.
No, don't worry about it. Not at all. I had it up. Now there it is. Here it is right here. Oh, I just lost it. It's coming. Just give me a second.
If I can interject here for a second, Anne's going to show you the waste reduction resolution, not zero waste per se, but there were a couple of things, political realities that I think are really important in your community to think about as you proceed with what policy you want. One was we came up with, what was it, Anne? Like 50%. I mean, it's not very aggressive. And we internally amongst us had talked about a higher percent reduction. Had we gone that route, we would have lost. In fact, one of the commissioners proposed a higher percentage, and that was defeated. And so it was smart of us to not go as strong as some of us wanted to go for the 90%, because we would have, like I said, we would have lost. The other political reality we have, like in Missoula, Katie talks about how that they have a private hauler and private landfill. So there's some challenges with that. So you have to kind of know how your waste is handled and who you're working with, because we are working with the city, but we're meeting actually with resistance from the county about all of this, because they currently rely on the tipping fees to fund their operations, and they're feeling a little threatened that if we're really successful in reducing our waste, that we're going to reduce their necessary income. It's a valid concern, and one that we addressed at the commission, because we almost lost, quite frankly. We have a tiny commission, and one of the commissioners was missing, and we almost lost. And in part because the county said, you do this and you're removing an important hub or spoke to the or important thing in the spoke. I can't remember what he's saying, but you have to kind of know what the political realities are in your area. And we're still going to be meeting with resistance, but this is a long-term goal. We're not saying, okay, starting next year, our waste reduction is going to be 60%, and too bad for you. So we're just going to be working with the city and the county on ways to sort of turn that system around a little bit so that they don't need so much garbage to operate effectively. So the political reality in your community is something you really want to work with. So develop something that's going to work in your county.
Excellent, thank you.
I might just make a couple more comments and then leave it open to the questions. But Robin, again, if you could, sorry about this, if you could put the graph up instead, I'm not going to have you walk through the resolution, just some highlights from the resolution. One thing I thought was a great thing in our whereas clauses is that in terms of climate change, of all things that are local, it's waste management. So this really is an area where local governments, that's where they are the ones who make decisions on waste management. So it's a great thing to do as a local community. Then in the resolution itself, so Denise just talked about those percentages. Oh, so this, I like this. So the goals that we set that were adopted by the commission, 50% waste reduction by 2040, 35% by 2030. You can see in this graph that from 2000 to 220, it's a pretty, I mean, there's some slight increases, but it's pretty flat between 10 and 20%. And these numbers, you know, they aren't 90%, no, but they are significant increases. And the other thing is we have been working with our solid waste staff. And when we showed them this graph, no one sneezed. I mean, no one said, no, we can't do it. I think they were appreciative that it was within a limit that they thought they could do. So that we like this graph because it illustrates some good changes. We recognize in the resolution, these are not final results. We've also the resolution, and I've sent the resolution to Robin. She can share it with all of you. Accompanying the resolution to our city was a big fact sheet that has a lot of information that we relied on. So she can share that with you as well. There were also zero waste resources. I sent her that too. She can share that with you. But in the resolution itself, it says that every 5 years, the city will assess where it is going forward. It also directs that there will be a waste audit done of what's going into the landfill so we can target. The other really important piece about our strategic or about our waste resolution is that it directs the city manager to develop a strategic plan for waste reduction. And we have asked for, we want to contract that out in our next fiscal year. We've asked for $60,000 to contract out for preparation of a strategic plan, which would lay out, you know, in those categories of reduce, reuse, refuse, recycle. Refuse goes into, sorry, but what options are available to us, cost benefit, timelines, and percentages. How do we, adopting this measure will reduce waste by how much? So it'll give us a roadmap for how we're going to get to achieving these things. And then the last provision that Denise was just talking about, which was a very important one in our community, the resolution itself recognizes that there will be budget impacts to this because unfortunately in Helena, probably like many other places, our solid waste department operates with money, with the amount of waste that ends up in the landfill. That's how money is raised to run our solid waste program. And so if we're going to be reducing the amount of waste going to the landfill, we're going to need some different budgeting options. We recognize that. We don't want to shy away from that. We want to be upfront and plan for that as well. I think, you know, I think those are most of the things I wanted to talk to you all about. And so I'll open up for questions. We're so excited to be here.
Thank you so much, Anne and Denise and Katie, for your presentations. You know, at the start, it's going to be a little bit like drinking from a fire hose because we're just starting this topic, and pretty clear 6 sessions isn't going to do it, but it's going to get us started. So thank you all for that wealth of information. I will follow up with sharing all the resources you guys have given us. And I do want to just move us into questions because I know there are a bunch of them coming through. And I want to start with Karen Hilding, if she's still here, because she had her hand up fairly early and I didn't catch it. And if others have questions, you can either put your hands up or type them into the chat box and we'll get going from there. So Karen, are you still here? If so, you can unmute yourself and ask your question. She might have gotten off. It looks like she did. Okay. Anybody want to put their hand up to ask a specific question?
Robin, there was a question earlier in the chat that we can ask now as we wait for any other questions to come up, which was about kind of a follow-up to Katie's presentation about, you know, those individual actions and what you can do in communities. But there was a question about what we can do to engage businesses as well, and if there are any tips or advice there. And then I have a second question, but I'll save it after in case any of the other attendees have questions.
Okay, and I just found Karen's message. She had to get off because it's probably she had a 1 o'clock. And it's that in Whitefish, the main source of waste is construction waste. It is excessive now with people remodeling homes that were remodeled just 2 years ago and spending millions. Well, they are throwing away materials that could be easily used. I guess that's not a question. That's just underscoring what you guys are saying. One other question that's here is, given the current political climate, for those of you who are moving forward in Helena and Missoula, what would be your suggestion or recommendation to a community that's just kind of starting out here? How important is a city resolution or not in, kind of where we are today?
Should I jump in on business or resolution or what
Yeah,
recommended order?
Would you mind starting with business, and then we can jump to that last one Robin mentioned?
Perfect.
And I will just note, I saw Laurel had her hand up. I don't know, at some point. Just noticed that. So we have been working hard to engage businesses in lots of different ways. And one of the ways that we've found most effective, well, we do have our Trailblazer Awards. So I showed a picture of Logjam Presents, and we did recognize them. We gave them the award. We got some media around it, and we are in the process of putting together case studies of businesses who are doing, just to promote to the community in general, businesses who are going zero waste in various ways. And then we're also trying to partner with businesses to come in and help basically provide zero waste consulting services from them, do an audit, let them know where their biggest pieces are that can change, and help them get a hold of the systems and train their staff so that they can move forward with that. And we've had various amounts of support from the business community to do that. But I think COVID really threw a wrench in that, because people don't want people coming into their business. People aren't even in the business. But it is moving forward. And then the city did do the We Pledge program that I also referenced. It was really a city initiative, so I know maybe a little less than I would like to about it, but the idea there was to get businesses to pledge to use things like compostable ware. It was mostly restaurants, and it was around using compostable ware and reducing their food waste. And then they get a sticker and some acknowledgement on our website. So the community knows that these are businesses that are committed to helping move us towards zero waste. I think ultimately when we did zero waste, the school, Jeanette Rankin Elementary School, they saved money, and they saved money pretty quickly. So the amount of material that was going to the landfill reduced enough that they saved money on their dump fees. And then they paid a little more for compost pickup and some recycling, but it still was enough for them to save money. So that's a big push for businesses too. And I think a lot of businesses, especially as businesses move in from out of state, as you're referring, which is why we have so much C&D waste. It's horrific here also. Often they're coming from places where they have more options to do zero waste. They can recycle more things. So they're starting to demand that. And I think there are this whole generation of folks who are really paying attention to sustainability, and they're starting to demand that. So that can work well in a business too, that they recognize that their employees really want to be more sustainable. There's some simple things they can do. If they can save a little money on top, it all works out really well. That said, I know people have tried to start like a for-profit business consulting service, and that businesses are not, they're not ready to pay for that. But yeah, it's been a slow process.
Thank you, Katie. So, this has been a learning curve for the session in terms of allowing enough time for questions. So I apologize. We have actually time for one more question, and I'm going to give it to Laurel Eastman because she had her hand up previously, and then we'll move to closure.
Oh, thank you, Robin. I just wondered what you or Katie or Anne thought about things like working really upstream with legislation, national legislation. I saw that they introduced this Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act, or so do you think that's a good approach to helping some of these waste problems?
I can jump in, and I'm sure you have good thoughts on this too, but just quickly, we really we're keeping track of all of those things that are happening. And I think there are a lot of opportunities at a national level that we want to connect with, but we recognize that we really do live in a conservative state, especially right now, and that we have a lot more power at the local level, and that we do need to keep moving things forward at the local level where we can make change and engage our community so that people are supportive. People don't like to have national things dropped on them in Montana, in my experience, which is understandable. So I think that's where we're at. They were really important. We're trying to keep track and use them where we can, but keep our focus really local.
Awesome. Thank
Yeah,
you.
no, I would just add just briefly, I think everyone has different interests and different connections and different, so if there are some people who like working on the national level, go for it, do that. And if you, I mean, I'm not doing that, but some people are, and I like working on my local level. So I would just say, go with where you are. We learned about, and then a few of us attended, there was a national zero waste conference held out of, it was California Recycling that sponsored it in December. It was a 3-day. They gave us a discount because we're, not for volunteers. It was fantastic. And they were talking about all the national, international attendance. So there's room for it everywhere. And it's an individual choice or an organizational choice as to where you want to focus it. This is my own thought.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm sorry that we're going to have to close the content part of the session. Ton of information. Really appreciate Anne, Denise, and Katie, all of your time and energy. Thank you so much. Lots of resources, lots of ideas coming forward. I just want to support everybody on time closure of this session, and we have 2 more things to share with you. One is that we've asked you to take, we're going to ask you, I'm putting in the chat box right now, a very, very, very short little survey that will help us make sure we're putting on the program you want to see. And so if you could just help us by answering these 5 quick questions, it will help us improve the sessions coming forward. The link is in the box. Thank you so much. And lastly, I am going to pass the baton on to Katie Wallace, who's going to complete our session with the raffle part of our program. So take it away, Katie and Jill, I think, actually.
Yeah, we're gonna tag team this. Thank you, Robin. So part of our virtual series is to offer a gift card to a sustainable business in the Flathead that's either focused on zero waste or is just very green overall. To thank all of you for taking the time to attend. So today I saw that this person has already dropped off, but she was on the call earlier. We do a random raffle drawing, and the winner for today is Margaret Henderson. We're gonna send her a gift card to Sage and Cedar. And Jill, another board member here for Climate Smart, is going to coordinate the mailing of that so we can send the gift card to Margaret. But each upcoming session will have another drawing for another sustainable business in the Valley. So we welcome you to sign up for future sessions, and you might win a great gift card.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. It's been a delightful beginning to our series. Feel free to reach out to us through our website, email contact, and share your questions, concerns, or comments. And we look forward to seeing you next month. The next month, oh, I didn't do my job. Hang on. My job is to inform you about the next month's session, which is April 28th, last Wednesday of the month. I'm looking for my, Dios mío. I very carefully put the registration link, and for some reason it's not showing up. I'm so sorry. I don't know why it's not showing up. I don't know if anybody else has it, but otherwise we'll send it out along with the resources to the folks who participated. All right, take good care, everyone. Have a great afternoon, and yep, keep leaning in. All right, take care. Bye-bye.